Who doesn't love citrus? Sweet, juicy, and all that vitamin C, and you can't beat homegrown, that is for sure. Now, it might be getting just a little bit chilly at this time of the year, but at the farm here, things are really hotting up. I'm at Engels Nursery in Dural, New South Wales, checking out all things citrus. And I've got a few little odd jobs for you this weekend. One of the things I love about citrus is the range of varieties. Now, you might have several. Now, this is Washington navel. You can always tell it from the little navel at the bottom of the fruit. Now, if you don't have room for a big tree and you've got a courtyard or maybe a small veranda or a deck, then grow the Washington navel as an espalier. Lots of fruit, and you just keep it trimmed onto that frame.
Look in my cloudy eyes, I never wake.
And then, of course, there are all the lemons. It's such a huge family. Now, there are lemons, don't forget, for cool climates and for more tropical, warmer areas as well. But I must admit, it's limes that have really taken the limelight over the last couple of years. Now, these are Tahitian limes, great producing. Don't be mistaken, they do start out as green, and they're the green fruit there, and they'll get larger, and that's when the flavour is at its strongest. Now, if you buy them or leave them on the tree to turn yellow like these, they are juicier and sweeter. So you just harvest them for different times. The kaffir lime comes from Southeast Asia. Now, it's interesting, between there and here, the Philippines, Singapore, and of course Thailand, they use the leaves for cooking. The fruit, well, it's pretty good for zesting, but that's about it. Mark, third-generation nurseryman. I knew your mum and dad. They were brilliant people. You must have picked up a lot from them.
Oh, certainly. I grew up on this site since I was this big.
Yeah.
It's been doing it my whole life.
Yeah. What are the three main things, the main tips that home gardeners need in growing citrus?
As Dad used to always say, the three things are sunlight. They're grown out in full sun like this. So you want full sun all day kind of thing, not partial shade, full sun. Next thing is drainage. They like water, but it's got to drain away. So you've got to make sure you've got a nice, well-drained position. If you've got clay, try to build it up and have a mound and plant it up on top. Third and final thing is fertiliser. No one ever fertilises them enough. You've got to feed them. I feed them once every 3 months and really give it to them. You use the pelletised manures, but most people put like a little handful on. You've got to give them like half a bucket a tree, and they absolutely love it.
Now, it's a hard question, but have you got a favourite citrus?
I certainly like the Tahitian lime, one of the best. I mean, you can use it in your cooking or maybe even in a gin and tonic. It's awesome.
Fair enough. What about your dad's lemonade tree?
Oh, well, that is a favourite. Looks like a lemon, but eat it straight off the tree just like a mandarin or orange, and fantastic.
Doesn't matter where you come from, it only matters where you end up.
I know they're versatile, but a citrus hedge, what's this, kumquat?
Yeah, this is a Calamondan hedge, planted over 30 years ago, and
wow.
Look at how well they've done. Nice and dense and thick, blocks out the traffic noise, and then you get these beautiful kumquats to pick.
That's a 10 out of 10 selection. Now, I noticed the spacings of your trees are quite tight. How far are they apart?
They're literally about 50 centimetres apart, which you wouldn't believe that, but like I said, 30 years it's been here, it's doing fine.
Calamondan hedge, you can't beat it. That's great. Now, this tree may look to you like, wow, look at the fruit, but at this time of the year, as the fruit ripens, it gets heavier and heavier, and these branches start to sit on the ground. Now, some are actually on the ground down there. But we can get winds coming through, and with the weight here, the branches just break off, so you lose the fruit and you lose the branch, and it can often expose it to diseases and insects and what have you. And you can end up losing half your tree. So my suggestion is, it may sound a little bit drastic, but prune off about a third of this fruit. You can juice it, give it to the kids. There's 1,000 ways to use it. Now, bugs do love citrus, so keep them well off. It's a good rule of thumb to spray every 2 to 3 weeks with a horticultural oil, and over time, 6 to 8 weeks. Now, while I'm down here, I can notice that there's another major problem, number 2 to look at. All of this fruit that's sitting on the ground is infested with Queensland fruit fly. Now, on the west coast of Australia, in WA, it's Mediterranean fruit fly. Doesn't matter what the fruit fly is, it's sitting in here waiting to reinfest your trees. So get rid of it. Now, during summer, you quite rightly keep your citrus nice and well mulched to keep the roots nice and damp and cool. But that mulch and compost can build up. So make sure that you get it right back from the trunk because it can cause collar rot. Keep the area underneath what I call the shadow line, underneath your tree, nice and bare so that the citrus gets all the advantage. And as Mark mentioned earlier, don't forget, keep that fertiliser up to them every 3 months, even in winter. And don't forget, always water the fertiliser in. Now, this size tree, 9 litres of water is reasonable. But during summer, you're going to need 2 or 3 of these a week. And as the tree gets larger, you might need to use the hose. But if you've got water restrictions, then fill your watering can up, maybe every day during summer. Okay, we've convinced you that citrus are great, but what do you look for when you're about to buy a tree? Well, don't buy the first one you look at and don't buy by price. Look at quality. You think, wow, that's a lovely big fruit ready to go, but it's a little plant with a big fruit. I'd give that one a miss. It's a bit too young. And this fellow, he's too small with too many fruit. In fact, there's way too many fruit. You're going to have to remove all of that anyway because it's going to go backwards the minute you plant it. Now, this one here, you're going to have to prune and shape this tree, and it's also not so happy because it's there's a bit of nutrient problem going on there. You're going to need to feed this one up to get it looking good. These fellows are fantastic. Beautiful shape, nice and well-formed, ready to start flowering and producing fruit for you next year. Now, these are fairly advanced and they're fairly expensive. Something in between is where I'd go, like this little fellow here. Now, all of these trees are grafted. We've been grafting trees for 200 years in Australia for very good reason. The rootstock, and that's the bit at the bottom that goes into the soil, it's disease resistant, insect resistant, drought resistant, and inundation when we get a storm. If you got waterlogged soil, it'll even survive that. It's super tough, but it's also pushing an enormous amount of energy into your plant. You end up with a citrus that's 5 and 6 metres tall, and the cockatoos get all the fruit. The Japanese have come up with a dwarfing rootstock. It's called flying dragon. So when you see dwarf citrus, it doesn't mean dwarf fruit. It actually means a dwarf rootstock. So this is the graft down here. So these are perfect in the garden, perfect in a courtyard, and they're fantastic to put into a pot. Okay, in the middle, perfect. Make sure it's not too deep, and then use a top quality Red Tix potting mix. It'll have the fertiliser, the water crystals, all the goodies in there. They're going to get this plant growing really well and quickly. Now, as with all grafted plants, make sure that that graft union is well above the soil. And the great thing is, with that dwarf rootstock, you may never need to repot this plant again. Now, with my tips and Mark's fantastic ideas and suggestions, you're going to have a bumper crop. Good gardening.